Now, I'd like to start the discussion. If you have any questions, please unmute microphone and speak directly. Please state your name and affiliation before you speak. And please note, maybe today's panelists have no problem speaking Chinese. So you may ask your questions in Chinese. Well, I will start discussion. Do you have any questions? Please. I will open to you.
Okay.
Okay. Please speak.
Thank you for a very good presentation for doctors. And I have one question to Dr. Sun from Shanghai University. I don't know the usage of this word digitization and digitalization. In Japan, there's a little difference between these two words, digitization and digitalization. Digitization means put any resources into digital form, so-called machine readable. And digitalization is the next step to use such digitized resources to use into researches. And I think your great project, a very challenging project, is one step of digitization. And do you have any, in your institute, do you have any project or a plan to go ahead to the next stage, digitalization?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, please answer.
Okay, so firstly, I would like to I have to say that I'm sorry because I didn't quite understand the definition of the two terms you just explained to me. One is digitization and the other is digitalization.
Okay.
Am I right?
I talk about another word. Do you have any plan in your institute or in your project to make some method to use digital data into research?
Okay, so I got you. So the first stage of our project is to get the raw materials first by investigating and by selecting the absent titles from mainland China. So basically, in the current stage, we all we need to do is to collect these titles and these books. For further studies, we do have plans, but currently we are short of hands to do all the stuff. But I'm sure in the future when we achieved our first stage goal, we'll carry out the second stage, which will focus on the integrated studies of the images and the documents we got from the first stage.
Okay, I know this is a very difficult stage. So if you have any idea, I would like to hear from you. But let's work together in future.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your question.
It's okay. All right. Now I will add a question to Ms. Song. Is okay? Are you okay?
Sure, of course.
As you know, our KU AUKUS is also participation in this project. Do you know? Maybe.
Yeah, I know. I know. One
Oh,
of my colleagues
yeah.
told me about.
Do you plan to release all the data completion? What image format will you use for opening to the public? If you for example, are you thinking about IIIF like
Uh-huh.
this?
Uh-huh.
Mm.
We are now doing the TIRFF.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, that is the best information, but we can also do with GIP or something like that. I'm not quite familiar with the technical problems, but here I want to lay my emphasis on one point, that is we have to get the process authorization before we open the images to the public.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, well, not a question, but more like a follow-up comment on these excellent questions. And I've just typed this into the chat, and I think this sort of distinction it also exists in the Chinese lingo. These sort of slight difference in terms in digitization processes and perhaps digitalization or datafication. I guess this is also where the cultures come into play, right? Sort of different concepts, or slightly different concepts of these work processes, and how we phrase them, of course.
Yeah, I would just like to add on that last point as well. I put in a chat box. In the UK, we just assume it's a typo if somebody writes digitalization, because again, like Hans says, this is very, very much a cultural thing. And when I was working in the UK, I used to get a lot of my Chinese students would write digitalization. We would always correct it to digitization, because to us, digitalization is a medical term. It's the administration of a drug called digitalis, right? You know, rather than something you do with imaging. But as I said, this is another issue of language, and I would have liked to talk more about the issues I raised at the end of mine, but combined with language, it is the culture, and it's the different uses of the different words vary in different cultures. And I think this is a good example of why my Chinese students used to keep writing digitalization. But in the UK, we would always correct that to digitization.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. If I can carry on about your great platform. If I can talk a little bit about KAUKAS. At the end, the speaker was talking about, I think I called it correctly, about making a platform available for other people, not only researchers, but also for other people. And I want to support this very, very strongly, because when it comes to getting funding, certainly in the West, I know in the USA, in the UK, most European countries, they don't want to give money for digitizing things anymore, right? That was 2010. They give money for, you're going to digitize stuff, and what can you do with it? Okay, so the researcher is interested with this. But if at the same time, you can make it accessible and available to people with a general interest, the public, if I can call it that, non-specialists and non-researchers. And I can think in my experience of two projects which would both historical and could be very limited. One is the Old Bailey online, the transcripts of the Central Criminal Court of the Old Bailey. and the other one is the Doomsday Book Project. And with both of those, they're both fantastic resources for historians that are interested in those periods. With the Old Bailey Online as a new research project looking at court practices during that time. But I use both of those in my classes, and I get my students to type my name into the Old Bailey Online to see if there's anybody with my name that has been arrested and deported off to Australia in the 19th century. Many, many, many. I have an Irish family, yeah? So people become interested in things like this. Personal histories, private histories, history of my family, history of my neighborhood. And that attracts a lot more funding because the funding bodies, they want to see their work spread as widely as they can, getting as many people interested in it. So if you can figure out a way to make your platform, it's already open, so that's fine, no problem there. But for I don't know, when you put in the funding applications, make sure you emphasize that you are making this available for interested people, whoever they are, whether they're students, researchers, but also ordinary people who may want to research whatever the history of their family or their neighborhood or the country or the language, whatever it is they're interested in. Thank you. That was it. But well done for making it open. Otherwise people can't find it and read it.
Okay. Do you have questions? Do you have? I will ask Xu Liheng, Professor Xu Liheng.
Right, please.
You talked about OCR recognition. Do you think Chinese character, the printed matter, maybe no problem, but wood type, how do you process this, recognize this? This is a wood type. Do you,
So
printed matter is no problem.
right, right. I guess your question is about wood block types.
Yeah.
Right, right. Actually, wood block types are not a problem as big as manuscript. So there have been attempts actually to improve the algorithms for wood block type already. And one immediate example that comes to mind, and one that we could all see, is actually those used by CText. So basically, it's as far as I understand it, it's sort of breaking down the woodblock the entire woodblocks into separate characters, and also assembling them sort of in terms of data, so that the algorithms could be improved for further use when other woodblock printed texts are used for OCR. So I do not think woodblock type would be the sort of the biggest challenge. In fact, manuscripts would be, and I'm sure there are many handwritten manuscripts in your library as well, and that obviously has to be a longer term problem that we all have to tackle. Still, at this stage, I do not see promising signs of using automated OCR without much human intervention, achieving success in yielding satisfactory results. satisfactory OCR results. So that is still, I think, a pretty big challenge for Chinese material at least.
And maybe and in Chinese, there is a big problem is word and word border. Maybe
Exactly, and that is
Yeah.
that also
Mm.
marks the distinction, right, between what we just said, the woodblocks, right,
Yeah.
this of the
Mm.
individual
Mm.
woodblock types, and the handwriting,
Mm.
which often,
Yeah.
between the characters are the boundaries are quite unclear.
Mm.
And actually, I think this, colleagues focusing on China might have things to learn from scholars working on Japanese material
Mm.
in terms of this. Handwritten materials in Japanese. That's what I meant.
Can I follow up on this one, because I was going to ask something not too dissimilar from that, because when I give talks about, or sorry, in the past, when I've given talks about research projects at my previous center at UCL, one of the ones I always talk about is transcribed Bentham that's moved on to Transcriptorium, that's moved on to Transcribus, where you have learning algorithms for handwritten texts. And one of the questions when I include that in a talk is, I'm always asked if it's a Chinese audience, whether that works with Chinese scripts, Chinese handwriting, and I have no idea.
Mm.
But what I do know is that the original project it developed out of transcribed Bentham, so that was using Jeremy Bentham's handwriting. So using that as a training set, it was very, very effective, but only on Jeremy Bentham's handwriting, which is very distinct, right? But now Transcribus has got several training sets. And what you can do is you can input your own training data. And I can't remember how many, it's in another talk, how many pages, I don't know, 10 pages or 20 pages or something. And then you correct the transcription and the algorithm should learn from that. But I have no idea if that works with Chinese or Japanese cursive script. I don't know if anybody's tried it. Anybody tried it? Don't know.
And to add a quick point to Simon's question, I would also love to hear what our Japanese friends here have to say about projects such as the Kuzushiji project. I think I'm not sure what algorithms or what mechanisms they employ, but there have been sort of machine learning attempts as far as I remember. So whether those inspirations could be applied to Chinese is also what I'm very, very interested in.
Dr. Nagasaki, do you have any questions?
Yes.
Ah.
Sorry.
Do
Yes.
you have any questions?
Yes. So as I wrote in the chat, so regarding the term, so data-driven research is recently become a key term of the governmental policy for funding academic research. Then so data-driven humanities will be a key term in the context of governmental research policy in Japan. So the word data-driven is not popular in UK and China so far.
If I could respond to that quickly, at least for China, as far as I could see, it hasn't become a a sort of fashionable key term for funding policies yet. Whereas digital humanities, I think, has already become one. I have during my postdoc, I have made presentations on data-driven history or data-driven historical research, but actually I do not see that many colleagues picking up that term, and I don't really know why, but I would be happy to think about the reasons behind this with you all.
Yeah. Thank you. So the word so to get funding, such a word may be important in the
So-
sphere. Yes.
Right, and this is very interesting, at least to myself. So, do you see scholars catering to that specifically, and do you see it? Do you identify differences between that and the DH research that is already going on in Japan?
So so the word is not used in, but not is several scholars already use the data-driven humanities, and several large projects which will be start in several years. So adopt the word to get funding from government in large scale.
Right.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for that.
you. Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a question? No. Mr. no. So Miyagawa, do you have any questions? Maybe
So,
he.
and
Okay.
may I ask one more question about text encoding? So in 2016, we established a special interest group of East Asian Japanese in the TEI consortium, the text encoding initiative consortium, and we have a place to discuss not only Japanese textual encoding, but also Chinese. And then, so we want a colleague to discuss the TEI for Chinese. So, and I have several, we have several colleagues in Taiwan, but we don't have colleagues in mainland. So then if you know any community who are interested in TEI or text encoding, so I want to have a contact with them. So do you know the committee on text encoding in mainland China?
Is it? To whom is this question?
Professor Mahoney and the professors. Yeah.
Mahoney. Professor Mahoney, could you please
Yeah,
answer
Simon,
this
do you?
question? Okay.
Sorry, I didn't. Is there a question?
Please repeat one again.
Yeah.
Nagasaki.
Yes,
Professor
yes.
Nagasaki.
Yes.
Exactly.
Do you know any community which is interested in text encoding initiative or such kind of text encoding in China? And not in Taiwan.
I'm having difficulty hearing. It's very, your voice is very, very low. I have my volume turned up, but I can't hear you. Can you say that again?
Yes, sorry. So can you hear me?
A little.
Sorry. I'll switch your mic.
That's better. That's better. Better. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you know any community which is interested in TEI or text encoding initiative or such kind of text encoding in China and not in Taiwan? So because I know I have a strong relationship with Taiwanese community, but I don't have a good relationship with such kind of community in China.
Okay, for TEI, Text Encoding Initiative, when I was looking at the CAOCAS project, I saw a link for TEI on there. So clearly in Japan there is. I don't work with anybody in TEI in mainland China. TEI has become an international standard for the encoding of documents. But it's not used by everybody. I have friends and colleagues who, for their projects, they tell me that TEI is not suitable. But the big advantage of TEI is that if it's an international standard, if everybody uses the same standard, it's much easier to link data sets together. You know, I mean, that is the issue. So if you're wanting to have online data sets that will talk to each other, it needs to use a common standard, and the obvious one to use is TEI. So the answer to your question, I'm afraid I actually don't know. I'm not sure, but I've got close contacts with Shanghai Library, and I'll ask them. I'm assuming their platform is TEI, but I made that assumption. I didn't ask. And I should read their recent paper actually, and it may tell me in there if it's TEI. The options that you have if you have a project are either making use of TEI or creating your own bespoke encoding schema. And again, the big thing with TEI, if everybody uses the same standard, then everything will becomes interoperable. But I do have colleagues who tell me, particularly if they're using a literary text, but one that is not standard. Yeah, TEI is very good for uniform text and things like that. It's not quite so good if you have a text and somebody's written annotation all the way around it, upside down and in and out. That's very, very hard to do. But when I used to teach XML and XSLT, I will want to teach that first before they teach TEI. But I know in some places they go straight in and they teach the TEI. But I was more comfortable for the students should be familiar with XML and XSLT and the purpose of a schema before just using a ready-made one. That's probably not very helpful to you, but I can find out for you. TEI, if you go to the TEI webpage, if I remember right, they do have a list that you can click on that has all the TEI affiliated projects. It's probably a good idea to have a look through those and see if there are any that you're familiar with, or any of the other East Asian organizations that are in there. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. So I was a board member of TI Consortium several years ago, and so now in 2016, so I established the special interest group of East Asian Japanese text in the TI Consortium. So
Good.
I'm seeking for the colleagues for Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese colleagues who are interested in text anchoring. So far, we don't have enough standard for text encoding. So the further, so we need to establish at least a comfortable way to encoding our text.
You need a critical mass of researchers working in this area. You need sufficient numbers. TEI is community-led.
Yes.
They have long mailing lists.
Yeah.
So all the issues and the new questions that come up with regard to encoding and using TEI, these are all negotiated through the mailing lists, and the solutions come that way. So if you already have a special interest group, that's the first start, right? And then what I would recommend is that you, yeah, I saw that, yeah. Is that TEI is often a way that people first get in touch with digital humanities through TEI. But it may be a good idea to promote your special interest group around the various mailing lists for East Asia digital humanities communities. I'm happy to help with that if you wish. And another issue, it may be an issue, I don't know, but TEI, I brought up ADHO, the Association of Digital Humanities Organizations, and there's been a couple of chats in the chat, but when it was set up, it was very, very Western focused. ADHO is trying to get away from that. They now have DHGO, yeah, DH Global Outlook, you know, where they try to be more inclusive. And TEI also was originally a Western focus, so it may all be in English, I don't know. If it's all in English, then that's a problem. And there was a message in the chat about having a, you know, about the reason we have a, or reason you have a Japanese Association of Digital Humanities. I was having a chat with one of my Chinese PhD students who said, wouldn't it be a good idea if there was an East Asian community, right? Where everybody, you know, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, mainland China, Hong Kong, can all have their group together, which I think would be a very good idea. And the reason for that is at the moment, it's very centralized in ADHO. And I'm not convinced that that's the best way to organize things. Maybe having strong regional hubs, yeah, pulled together by ADHO would be the way to go. I don't know the answer to that, but it's just an alternative. And you may find that's an issue. If TEI is very Anglophone, then getting people from East Asia to become part of it may be difficult if all these conversations are carried on in English. The language and the dominance, preponderance, hegemony, I think I called it, of the English language, I think is a problem.
Yes. For that reason, I established the special interest group for East Asian Japanese, and then so we have same textual tradition. We Korean, Japan, and Vietnamese people learned from China in Chinese text. So so I believe we can share share a kind of a way, a good way to encode our text.
It's great. We shouldn't. I left Vietnam off the list, but of course, you know, the linguistic similarities there. It's just that the map I took was from Wikipedia, right? And when I put in East Asia, it didn't include Vietnam. I think that's South Asia or something like that. I'm not sure, but yeah, there are other places within. I mean, Singapore, I guess you've got Chinese and Malay as well. So there are other possibilities for the sort of the family of languages that you have. I don't want to be prescriptive and say which ones they are, but it's much broader. You've got Vietnam, you've got Singapore, and I don't know where else they have similar family of languages. I don't know, but it's very broad. But the focus is too much on English. We need to get away from that. But having said that, thank you very much for allowing me to join because it's English. Right? But I have spoken at many Chinese conferences and events where everybody else is speaking Chinese. I speak in English. I feel a bit embarrassed. I mean, Lik Hang has got perfect English. I can't speak Chinese at all. So well, I find it quite embarrassing.
Okay, thank you.
So if I
Thank you.
could jumping on this bandwagon, there is also a multilingual DH mailing list and group with Quinn Dombrowski and others, and with some East Asian representation. And I've been to some of their meetings. I think that is also relevant to what we have been talking about, since East Asian language materials are often inherently multilingual. So this might be of interest. And I think the pandemic has stalled a lot of what could be done, but the next plan, you know, for the group is to set up a special interest group under ADHO. So that is something to watch out for, and possibly, you know, to take part in as well.
I mentioned in my interest at the very beginning to talk diversity, and I don't know if you listened to me speak in other venues or read some of my publications. There's a lot of criticism about the lack of diversity in digital humanities and from a Western perspective. And it's even the Europeans. The Europeans are forced to publish in English, which is, when I say forced, they must publish in English, otherwise they get no academic credit, they don't get funding for their projects, and nobody reads it. Because, you know, us British people don't speak languages, for which I apologize. You know, I really do. On behalf of the English-speaking world, I apologize.
Okay.
It's our loss, right? It's our loss. And again, I've written about this because, you know, when I publish something in English, you can read it. If you publish something in Chinese or Japanese, Cantonese or whatever, number one, I can't find it because I can't search for it. When I find it, I have to run it through Google Translate. I can't read it. So, you know, you have access to a lot more information than us native mono-language people do.
Okay, we had good discussions. We have about 1 minute left, but I would like to conclude this discussion. Is okay?